Hello and good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. We are going to talk about amino acids and testing for amino acid levels. We're talking about metabolism, which is a fancy word for how you break down and use things, metabolism of amino acids. We're going to talk about the things that amino acids do. So let's just list off just like 5 or 6 that are kind of obvious, but things that you don't think about every day. Bone protein. So you got to make bone or you're going to have osteoporosis. You need bone protein. That's amino acids because we always think calcium, but yeah, there's amino acids too. Brain proteins related to if you don't have good brain protein production, problems like dementia and memory loss. The gut lining, classic, right? Amino acids required for producing the gut lining, avoiding leaky gut and all those kinds of problems. Stomach proteins having to do with stomach acid production, bladder proteins. If you have bladder problems like interstitial cystitis, all this kind of stuff. So we want to talk tonight about the essential amino acids, and they're really essential. Just like the essential fatty acids. These are like not optional things that you can have or not have. And so, and I think there's an interesting thing about how we think about amino acids in a limited way. I want to kind of try to expand that tonight and look a little bit at protein construction, and then how to design custom amino acid programs based on amino acid testing. So we'll look at a bunch of labs and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to break up the talk tonight a little bit into parts too. In case you have other things to do, you can listen to part 1 and you can listen to part 2 later because we'll have all this recorded. You can listen to it later if you need to. All right, so where's all this information from? Did Dan make this up? No, he didn't. Dan is studying with Dr. Richard Lord. And Richard is hammering me on proteomics now. So when Dr. Lord, for those of you who don't know him, was the original lab scientist that developed, well, he wrote this book, which is famous, and then he developed amino acid testing with his partner, Andy Braley, at the lab called Metametrics, 30, 40 years ago. He developed fatty acid testing. He developed what we now call organic acids. He was a scientist that did the GI effects, which is the most popular GI test in the entire industry. I think it's the #1 ordered functional medicine test, period, in the whole industry. So Richard is, kind of the lead scientist. He retired in his early 70s. I dragged him out of retirement, and he and I have worked 7 days a week together for the last 3 days. He's written several new books. He's drilled me on many subjects every week, including proteins. And he knows his proteins because he got his PhD in a lab that was studying proteins. So even as a very young man, he had a thing about proteins. And so should we, if we're interested in nutrition. So for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm Dan Kalish. I now have the honor of being a lead faculty member at the Institute for Functional Medicine in their practice implementation program. I've done a lot of work with the Mayo Clinic, working with Dr. Lord. I'm certified, IFM certified now, I'm legit. I passed all the tests and I've been practicing for a long time. Okay, so that's me. Enough about me. So I want to take a peek at amino acids as a subset of all the different things that we're doing and start to think about the patterns of amino acids and take up this bigger picture of not just individual amino acids doing individual things, but what amino acids do, period, right? So again, as I just mentioned, amino acids are required for making blood proteins, so they could be related to anemias, for hepatic or liver proteins, so they're going to be directly related to detox capacity, brain proteins, anything from athletic performance to memory, bone proteins, who would have thought, osteoporosis, gut proteins, the gut lining and villus blunting leaky gut damage, stomach proteins, reduced stomach acid output, all the GERD reflux type symptoms, antigen antibody protection, even the bladder, right? Everything all throughout your body needs protein. And so, and this is one of Richard's slides actually that he created for me. The first order significance is global protein biosynthesis, global. Generally low levels equals a global protein biosynthesis limitation. I'm going to read some of Richard's slides today because I think they're great, and I'm going to show you some parts of Richard's books today because I think they're great. But it's like reading Shakespeare. You just got to take a chill pill, sit down, and read the sentence a couple of times through till you really get what he's saying. He is a man of few words in very densely written and very poignant words, right? So we also want to talk about oh yeah, well how about RNA and DNA? Guess that's made out of protein too, right? Oops. And the list just goes on and on and on. I'm going to show you just some of these things. And what happens with proteins is they fold in the certain specific ways. I'm going to skip through some of these slides, but I want to show you the ones that I think are really important. Like this is really interesting, is that all human proteins have approximately equal amino acid composition. Say that again. All human proteins have approximately equal amino acid composition, meaning that they're made from these same amino acids in similar proportions. Isn't that wild? Did you know that? I didn't know that. That's really, really important. And I want to show you, this chart shows you the order in which they exist. So let me get out of PowerPoint mode because I want to show you this in a better way. Hang on a second. I think this will be easier to see. Well, maybe can I, oh, I can just, there we go. So look at the list here, because it's going to be really important. And this is there's a historical issue here too as well. So remember all human proteins have approximately equal amino acid composition. And you can see here for membrane and non-membrane proteins, the list starts off with methionine at a 9 and ends with the smallest by percentage amino acid that's essential for producing every single protein in the body, being tryptophan, down at a 1. So tryptophan is the rate-limiting step in the synthesis of all proteins in the human body except for collagen. I'm going to say that again because that's pretty deep. Tryptophan, this little guy down here, is the rate-limiting step in the synthesis of all proteins in the human body except for collagen. So even a small drop in tryptophan will make it so that you can't assemble proteins. So what is that going to affect? Well, we just looked at that. Anemias, osteoporosis, the gut lining, the brain, the urinary bladder, right? We're not talking about tryptophan and its role as a serotonin precursor. Forget about that. We're talking about tryptophan and its role in the assembly and production of every single protein in the entire human body. That's really, 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 really important. Okay, that's like so important. Should be the first day of class, that we're doing this. So, and there's all kinds of interesting things about how proteins fold. If you really get into protein, assembly, it's pretty cool. And then this is just one of those overwhelming slides that I'm showing, and you can read this later if you're listening to the recording. You can kind of freeze it and look at this. But to just emphasize that the role of B vitamins in the context that we're talking about tonight is to help you break down and utilize amino acids. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The role of B vitamins is to help break down and utilize amino acids. So for example here, thiamine or B1's major role is to act as a coenzyme involved in the breakdown of sugars and amino acids, right? B2 acts as a coenzyme and plays a major role in the production of ATP, the body's energy currency, okay? And that is also involving a lot of amino acids involved in the production of ATP. We can look at that later if we have time. Niacin, most common form of vitamin B3, okay, along with riboflavin, plays an important role in the generation of ATP, but also important in the breakdown of fat, carb, and proteins or amino acids. Pantothenic acid, the list goes on and on and on. This is what the B vitamins do to a large extent, is they help us break down amino acids. Peroxidine or B6, vital in the synthesis of amino acids and important neurotransmitters such as serotonin, It's also a factor in the breakdown of amino acids. How interesting is that? B6 helps assemble them and break them down both. So we just got to remember, B vitamins take on extraordinary importance when we're thinking about amino acids. And here's a nice little chart from Richard's book. that talks a little bit about this in terms of the lab workup. So we're going to look at in a minute. Okay, we're going to look at the lab tests in a minute. So just kind of priming you for that. So for example, fatty acid oxidation or fat metabolism requires some B vitamins. Carbohydrate metabolism requires some B vitamins. Energy production, citric acid cycle, requires some B vitamins. And there's amino acids involved in every one of these areas. Okay, there's always amino acids that are involved, and there's always B vitamins. And then you can get specific with, this is going to be important in a minute too, the B complex markers. Okay, a lot of these B vitamins, remember, help us break down amino acids. In fact, it shows over here which ones. So for example, these markers on the organic acids test help us metabolize or break down valine, leucine, and isoleucine, branched chain amino acids. Xanthuronate helps us break down tryptophan, an amino acid. Biotin helps us break down isoleucine, an amino acid. Methylmalonate, related to B12, right, helps us break down valine or odd chain fatty acids. So amino acids, fatty acids over and over. Figlu or formiminoglutamate or folate helps us break down histidine, which is an amino acid. Okay, so the B vitamins are in there. They're doing a lot of things. They're working with carbohydrate metabolism. They're working with energy production, right? They're doing a lot of different things. But one of the big things that B vitamins are doing is helping us break down amino acids. Not the only thing. So I'm trying to show here, they're also heavily involved in carb metabolism. B vitamins heavily involved in energy production. They're doing a lot of different things. But one of the important things they're doing, and apropos of tonight's talk, is helping us break down amino acids. And here's like a blow up for those of you that are kind of tech nerdy about all this. You can see literally how all this works. Here's all your B vitamins over here. Here's all your amino acids over here. And you can see that these vitamins help break down these amino acids. And we're measuring with these markers on organic acids. We're measuring directly how well we are supplied with B vitamins. And the implication there is how well are we able to process and use amino acids. That's one of the reasons why the B vitamins are so important. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Okay, and just more things that amino acids do. If you didn't think that was enough, these are symptoms associated with impairment of non-protein functions of amino acids. So the other things that amino acids can do outside of protein-related, outside of assembling proteins. Arginine, an amino acid, helps remove ammonia. It helps produce nitric oxide. Pretty important stuff, right? Histidine, an amino acid, helps produce histamine. Super important. Methionine and cysteine help produce glutathione. Couldn't get more important than that, the body's major antioxidant. So glycine and serine help produce heme. That's crazy. They help produce bile acids. So they're doing a lot of things in addition to assembling protein. Lysine helps you make carnitine, which helps you burn fat. Tryptophan, pretty famous one, helps you make serotonin and melatonin, helps make hormones, neurotransmitters. Phenylalanine and tyrosine make catecholamines like epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. They make thyroid hormones. That's pretty amazing. All kinds of things that are going on here, all because of amino acids. Now, the punchline in all this, and we're going to look at in a minute, is that you can measure amino acids. And when you want to think about, and we're looking at these labs, we want to think big picture here. We're going to see a bunch of labs in a minute. And what you want to think is, okay, what does this lab tell me about the inflow of amino acids coming in and the outflow, right? The inflow and the outflow. So inflow means you're releasing them from skeletal muscle, your liver, right? Outflow means you're using them to do things. You're making hemoglobin, enzymes, you're making DNA or RNA. You're making neurotransmitters, you're making insulin, you're making growth hormone, you're making glutathione, right? And then of course you can lose them out through the kidneys, through the GI tract, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an inflow and an outflow. And that's what we're trying to track here and understand from the lab what all this means. So that's the big picture. I just threw this in because I think this is cool, and most people don't know about this. So just as a total aside here, um, ammonia clearance requires arginine, citrulline, and ornithine. You need amino acids to clear ammonia. If you don't have those amino acids, ammonia is going to build up, and you're going to have pretty big cognitive problems. You'll have, brain fog and memory issues and stuff like that. And so when we're thinking about detoxification, always think about phase 1 and phase 2 and sulfur amino acids, but don't forget about the clearance of ammonia. I have a fair number of patients. I probably have, I don't want to exaggerate. I always exaggerate. Let me be honest here. I'm just reflecting on my last couple months. I have at least one patient a week, at least one patient a week who has a major problem with clearing ammonia. And if I didn't figure that out, they wouldn't get better because you can't walk around with a bunch of ammonia in your brain and feel like life is good, right? It's just not possible. So let me just show you one other thing here. We're going to come back to some of these slides. Oh, well, basketball season starting. For those of you that doubt my sincerity, this is my dad, my sister, and myself when I had hair. And you can see Golden State Warriors. My dad used to take us to basketball games constantly when we were kids. So, and we're starting a new one-year mentorship class. So if you've been thinking about taking it, this is the time to jump in. We'll have one more before the year is up in November, but you can still sign up for the one that's going on right now. If you're interested, check it out. We have the one-year class. It's really doing well right now. We have a great group of students. We have the community forum. We have the live calls where we review labs every week. All kinds of good things happening. Not too late to sign up. You save about $1,000 on enrollment if you use. If you just mentioned that you were attending this webinar, okay, you save $1,000. And you can sign up and do the class. You will never regret it. I promise. It's a really great course. I know it's kind of expensive, but we put a ton of energy and time into making this a great class, and I think you'll find it well worth it. All right. So let me look at, we're going to come back to some of these things here. I've got some other images I want to show you. Here we go. No. Oh, where is it? It's at the very end, I thought. Hang on. Oh, sorry. It's in a different slideshow. Hang on. I have two slideshows I forgot. Hang on one second. Here it is. There we go. Apologize for that. I forgot. I'm kind of working from two different slideshows here. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to look at some labs now with that as a warm-up, what we just did, and start to think about what we're going to do with amino acids. So now we kind of defined how important they are. And so I want you to be able to look at this in a couple different ways. One way, let's start with, is this amino acid is low. It means I'm going to give this amino acid and this condition is going to get better. So that's what Richard Lord calls horizontal knowledge, right? This plus this equals that. So let's just pick a few and go for it. And I'm going to just make up some findings here so we don't spend all day with me scrolling through labs. Should we start with an easy one? Let's start with an easy one. I just said, right? So let's just pretend, all of us collectively, that arginine is low on this patient. If arginine is low, it means that this patient cannot clear ammonia. Do you want ammonia building up in your brain? I don't think you do. I don't want ammonia building up in my brain. I've never had ammonia building up in my brain. I don't think it would feel very good. Talking to people who have ammonia building up in their brains, they don't seem very happy about it either. So you would give arginine if arginine levels were low, and then the body would start to clear ammonia. You could, if you wanted to, give citrulline and ornithine and do a combination formula. You can get more sophisticated, but the least that you would do is give arginine. Now, how much? I don't know. That's a hard question, right? So I think what's happened historically in integrative and functional medicine is that we had originally, here, let's see. And by the way, I do much prefer the ion panel. We had originally, back in the day, here's Richard's book here, as you can see. There you go. We had back in the day, I started in the early 90s, right? And so the guys that trained me were pretty active in the 60s and 70s. And in the 60s and 70s, if you were practicing natural medicine in the United States, it was pretty radical. You know, whether you're a medical doctor or a chiropractor, these were like bold people. It wasn't socially accepted, and it was challenging in a lot of different ways. And I think one of the things that happened back in the 60s and 70s is the naturopaths, chiropractors, medical doctors, osteopaths, all the people that were doing this integrative natural medicine thing figured out through trial and error, through lab testing, through clinical experience, how to really, and just through the history of natural medicine, right? How to really move the needle with treatments. And if I think about what I was how I was trained, and then I look at how we treat patients now, it's been watered down, often to the point where programs are no longer effective. And so we don't want to do anything crazy or dangerous. I'm not saying that. And the worst thing you can do is put a patient on a program that harms them. You'd rather harm yourself than harm your patient, right? So we're not saying that. But you also don't want to be walking around doing programs that are just not clinically effective. And I'm seeing a lot of that each decade that I'm in practice. I see more and more and more, ineffective programs. And by the way, Richard's books are available on iBooks. If you want to pick up one of his books, go to iBooks. It's Richard S. Lord, and you can find his books. He's written 3 of them now recently that are new. So let's look here. So in our made-up patient with low arginine, how much arginine are you going to give? Oh, look, hey, I found one by mistake. Ha, that's funny. This one is a real person with low arginine. Okay, so they're not clearing ammonia. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to start conservatively and then boost the dosages up. Depending on how sick they are, you would start with maybe 1,000 or 2,000 milligrams. If they tolerate that well, I would bump it right up to 3 grams a day as like a minimum starting dose. Give them a week or so, see how they do. If they're getting headaches, cut it back. If they're like, I think I'm okay, then bump it up to 4, 5, maybe 6 grams a day. So if you're going to do arginine, don't just give them like 1,000 milligrams because that'll never work. You can do that for years. It won't really push the pathways hard enough. Give them 3,000 to start with. If that's going well, after a week or two, try to bump it up to 6,000 and see what they feel like on 6,000 a day. See if that flushing of ammonia really starts to happen. So we want to keep people at these gram dosages, 3 grams a day, 6 grams a day. Be careful, don't hurt people, monitor them carefully. Don't let them just walk around and do this on their own. But at the same time, don't underdose them. 3 grams a day, 6 grams a day, somewhere in that range. The most that Richard has had me use so far is 9 grams a day. And the 9 grams a day makes a lot of people really sick. So you have to be careful. A lot of people can't tolerate that. Or you have to pulse it. You have to give 9 grams a day for a few days, then give them a break, then again give it to them. Or just cut the dose back. Make the dose. You don't want to make people sick, right? We're trying to do this to tolerance level. Okay, so that's one example. Let's do another example here. Let's pick an easy one. That's a bad example. Hang on, let me find one more. If I can't find one quickly, I'll just make one up. Oh, that's pretty convenient. Here's a bunch of them. So yeah, how about, oh gosh, we have a million to pick from here. Well, let's pick a good one. So let's say this person is low in tyrosine. So we would want to give them tyrosine to boost these numbers up. If you give the right amount of tyrosine, again, how much? 1 gram or 2 grams starting off with. Try to get them up to 3 grams a day if you can. And you should, if you get them on the right dose, be able to boost the tyrosine up by 1 quintile in about 6 months. If 3 grams a day is easily tolerated and they're not noticing any effect, you could bump it up. 6 is kind of a lot for tyrosine, but you could try, 4 or 5 grams a day. And don't be shy, see what the effect is, but do it in a stepwise fashion, not all at one time. So that's the horizontal knowledge. One of these amino acids is low, you give a product to boost it up. But what if this is happening? What if you see, we're taking now the 30,000 foot view. You might need eyeglasses to see this, but there's a whole bunch of really low amino acids here, and none of them are high. I wonder what that means, right? And now we're seeing a pattern. And then on the next page, wow, there's a whole bunch more here that are low, and there are none that are high. This person is, in general, tending to be quite low in amino acids. If we look at this lab here, we're seeing somewhat the opposite effect. Look at these amino acid levels on this patient. The pattern in general is that most of them are high. They're not all high, but there's a very strong pattern that the levels are high. So you can do the 1 + 1 = 2 thing, right? Where you give tyrosine, because tyrosine is low, figure out the right dose and do one amino acid at a time. I do that all the time with patients. But you can also, if you see a globally high level like this, or a globally low level like this one here, now you're treating globally. And what the heck is that going to do? That's what we started with. That's going to help them build better bones. That's going to help them build a better gut lining. That's going to help them build a better bladder, build a better life, right? If they're low in amino acids globally and you give them a broad spectrum free-form amino acid product, they're just going to start to heal everywhere simultaneously. This is pretty profound stuff. And so you want to dose it properly, and there's a couple of tricks. This is all from blood. This is all blood work. This is not, you can also test amino acids in urine, but this is all from blood. Yeah, if you're not seeing the slides and there's something wrong, hopefully everyone's seeing this. You should be seeing a lab test. You might need to, clear your browser or do something to make the thing pop up here, okay? Sometimes my camera takes over, and if you're seeing me, you just need to minimize the camera part, right? Now let's think about globally low amino acids. What would you do for treatment? Well, you would give amino acids. So, and if you're not seeing this for some reason and you can't figure out on your computer, it's all being recorded. We'll send the recording out tomorrow. So then how do you do that, and how much do you give? There's many companies to choose from. I am now working closely with 3 companies: Designs for Health, Metagenics, and Pure Encapsulations. You can get amino acids from plenty of other people. Ortho has them. Metabolic Maintenance is like the classic maker of them. A bunch of people have these amino acids, all right? But what you want to do is get free-form amino acids in a powder. And we'll look at some of this mTOR related stuff pretty soon. But depending on your intentions, you're going to use either 1 or 2 teaspoons a day, or say, I should say, per dose. And this is for someone where you want to globally raise their amino acids. And then there's one caveat here, caveat. Must have tryptophan. Why is that? Because tryptophan is a rate-limiting step in the assembly of all proteins. And most of the supplement companies that we all work with, the professional brands, don't put tryptophan in their free-form amino acids. Why, you may ask? Well, about 30 plus years ago, there was one bad batch of tryptophan made by one manufacturer in Japan, and it found its way to the United States. And I think 20 or 30 people died. Strangely enough, if you can believe this, I went to college with this guy, Carl, whose mom died from tryptophan poisoning. What are the odds? That's so strange. Anyways, so I have personal experience with this. That is a sad and horrible thing that Carl's mom died and all these people died. That is horrible. But what the FDA ended up doing was taking tryptophan off the market. Totally understandable. 20 or 30 people die. We don't know what's going on. Take it off. But it's been figured out. Okay, this was 30 years ago. They figured out it was one bad batch from one group of one manufacturer in Japan. They were using some kind of fermentation process. They didn't change the filters, and it got tainted. Okay. Since then, obviously, there have been no tryptophan deaths. The companies now are not using that manufacturing process anymore, and it's totally fine and safe to take. So, but because of this historical twist, most of the companies still don't put tryptophan in their free-form amino acids, which renders the product useless for our purposes because we're trying to assemble proteins. And remember how you have to have each one of the essential amino acids or you can't build a protein. It would be like if you were trying to build a house and you got all the wood and you got all the shingles, and then you told your carpenters to build a house, but there were no nails, right? Okay. They would look at you and they would say, well, we can't just prop this thing up. We need nails to make this house. And you would say, well, we don't have nails. They would say, well, then this is not going to work. You can't assemble a protein without tryptophan, just like you can't build a house without nails, right? Doesn't matter how many other amino acids you use, it's not going to work. So find a company that carries tryptophan. And what I do in my clinic is I'll have them take the free-form amino acid powder and just open up a capsule of tryptophan, 500 milligrams, and dump it in there so they have some extra tryptophan. You can give more if you want. If they're low in tryptophan, you can give more also, okay? And if you hunt around, you can find some of these companies do have tryptophan in their amino acid powders, but if you're using a company that doesn't, it's fine. Just add the extra tryptophan. Now, usually the doses are done either once or twice a day, depending on what you're trying to achieve. If you want to know what I actually do pretty much all the time is I do 2 teaspoons once a day because it's hard for people to remember. So let me just write that down. 2 teaspoons one time a day away from food. And when you give this large amount of a bolus of amino acids, it does a couple of things. One of the things it does is it forces the body to synthesize proteins, which is what we're trying to do. And you cannot get this from going all paleo and eating red meat 3 times a day. It will not work. It has a completely different effect. You need to do this with the free-form amino acids in order to stimulate these processes that we're trying to stimulate for repair. You cannot do it from just eating a ton of animal protein. It won't work, right? It's not an animal protein deficit that we're talking about here. It's a more complicated situation than that. Okay, so that's what you do if you have globally low amino acids. If you have globally high amino acids, I already gave this away. What are the nutrients that help you break down amino acids? B vitamins. So if the person's high in amino acids, all right, this is a blood test. It says that at the top here. Let me show you here. Plasma. So these amino acids are circulating in the plasma. That means they're not getting into the cells and you're not using them, okay? And so if you start to take B vitamins, you will start to metabolize or break down these amino acids so you can use them. So high levels of amino acids globally means the person needs B vitamins. Usually you could do a B complex with additional B6. So a B complex with 100 or more, 100, 150 milligrams more of vitamin B6. And they will then start to break down their amino acids. Okay, so it's another little treatment trick. So you have the horizontal trick, you just give arginine. You have the global trick where they're low and you give 2 teaspoons a day. And if the levels are high globally, then you can bring the levels down and get them to use amino acids by using B vitamins. All right. So let me write those things down and then we're going to take a short commercial break. So these are the main ideas here. Individual amino acids, dose them appropriately. You got to study this, not just listen to me, but 3 grams is like a starting point for most of them, right? And then you can do global free-form amino acids. That's going to affect the entire body. Usually 2 teaspoons, 1 time a day. Make sure you have tryptophan. And then if the levels are high, you're going to use B complex plus extra 100 or more milligrams of vitamin B6. And that's going to help that person break down or utilize the amino acids, right? Now, if you like this, just imagine joining my class and submitting your own patient's labs every week for a year. You will learn so much, I promise. We had classes this week, we had the Tuesday morning call that was deep. So there was a patient who, he was a Vietnam War veteran. No, he was Afghanistan, a veteran from the Afghan War, I think. Anyways, he's an American soldier. I think it was from the Afghan War because he was younger. And we had this whole hour-long discussion about grief and dying and how to work with patients who are suffering from, those kind of deep spiritual crises kind of things. That was like 8 a.m. for an hour. And it was an incredible conversation. There's a bunch of doctors that have a lot of experience with this. They were all sharing what they know. And then 9 a.m., we got into this whole other deep discussion on lab interpretation and nutrient levels and how to really assess things like amino acids and fatty acids and all these things. So even just in a week of class, you'll just learn an incredible amount of information here. Not just from myself, but I convey everything that Richard Lord teaches me every week, and then you learn from the other doctors in the program as well. It's pretty incredible. All right, so now let's go back for round 2. So let's look at amino acids again, and let's just take a peek at how they all interplay with one another. So let's take the most global view that we could for a moment. For when we're looking at these different body functions here, how does that play out in terms of amino acids? What are the portions of this test that directly relate to amino acids? Just to skim through an ion panel. Obviously, the amino acid section has to do with amino acids. That one is not too complicated to understand. So if the patient is high, you're going to give B vitamins and extra B6. If the patient is globally low, they have a pattern of low levels, you're going to give free-form amino acids, 2 teaspoons plus tryptophan. They're going to feel fantastic almost right away. But what are the other parts of the lab that directly relate to amino acids? Well, I'm going to go through them real quick here. Magnesium. Now, why is that? It's a mineral. Well, there's something called the glutathione magnesium dyad. Magnesium and glutathione are interlinked. If magnesium levels are low and glutathione levels are low, you're not going to be able to get magnesium levels to come back up. Say that again. Magnesium and glutathione are linked. Glutathione is made from amino acids like glycine and cysteine, right? So if glutathione levels are low because you're low in amino acids, you'll never be able to get magnesium levels up. And I see this every week in practice. I'll have patients who say, yeah, I take magnesium every day. And we'll test and it'll look like this. They'll still have low levels of magnesium because they're low in amino acids. The lack of glutathione will make it so that the body cannot process magnesium properly. So no matter how much they take, they'll never get enough. And you know all the symptoms that come from low magnesium are pretty dramatic. Similarly, if you're looking at toxic elements like aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, lead, they're going to be high if the person doesn't have sulfur amino acids to clear them through the liver. Let's see, what else is related to amino acids here? We're going to get into the organic acids in a moment. Here we go. So this is the organic acids section of the ion panel. And wait a minute, what do we call it? It's organic acids, right? So everything that we're measuring here is an acid. And most of these markers are going to be impacted by amino acids in one way or another. But let's just pick on the ones that are kind of obvious, okay? So if you're looking at the opening portion of this test, fatty acid metabolism, that's all about fats. Carbohydrate metabolism, that's how we break down carbohydrates. And then remember I mentioned earlier, the B vitamins, it's called B vitamin markers here, but really I think I would rename this as amino acid metabolism. We have fat metabolism, carb metabolism. I'm trying to stick up for amino acids here. This should be titled amino acid metabolism because that's what B vitamins do, right? It's one of the most important thing they do, and that's how we're measuring these. We're measuring by seeing what's the throughput of amino acids in the first place. That's what's telling us what these numbers are. And in case you forgot, because it's complicated and I'm talking fast, hang on a second. Let me show you this slide. Remember, it's not too late to sign up. You save $1,000. You mentioned this class. Let me show you the slide here. Here it is. Remember this guy? So when we're measuring the B vitamin markers, they're only showing up in relation to amino acids being broken down. That's where these markers are coming from. So as you break down valine, your alpha ketoisovalerate goes up, right? As you're breaking down leucine or isoleucine, these markers are created by the metabolism of amino acid, by the breakdown of amino acids. And if you don't have enough B vitamins, then these intermediaries build up. That's how that test is done. So in a way, the B vitamin section is really a referendum on amino acids. It took me so long to figure this out. I can't believe. I hope this is making sense because I know these concepts are kind of complicated. So let me say this one more time. So the B vitamin markers, if they're high, show that these chemicals here are building up, and that shows that your body is not metabolizing or breaking down amino acids. Okay? So a high marker shows a need for B vitamins. That implies that you're not processing amino acids. So this whole section has to do with amino acids. All right, and let's go on. That includes the methylation markers, right? That's B12 and folate, also completely dependent on amino acids. What about the neurotransmitter section? That's not related. Oh, yeah, it is. That's totally related to amino acids. Tyrosine, right, controls these markers. Tyrosine controls dopamine, epinephrine, and norepinephrine production, and amino acid. 5-HTP or tryptophan controls this marker, a serotonin marker, and amino acid. And these three here are all related to tryptophan metabolism, another amino acid. So there's another amino acid section for the brain in this case. The other one's for energy production. Oh, and I forgot to mention one other thing that you need here to make energy inside the cells, to make ATP. What do you need? Hang on a second. I just want you to see this so you don't think I'm making stuff up. What do you need? Energy production. Do you see it? Amino acids, right? Again, can you believe that? That's so crazy. Who would have thought? I think, are we done yet? Could there be more? Maybe detoxification. This is all amino acid driven too, right? These guys here are all related to glutathione, which is made from cysteine, glycine, amino acids, right? Glutamate. This guy is phase 1, phase 2 detox, taurine, methionine. These are all amino acids. This orotate, if it's high, shows you're low in arginine. All these markers are related to amino acids except for 2-methylhypurate. It's a little different. Okay, but 5 out of the 6 detox markers directly related to amino acids. Now, in the GI section, not so much. I think we're kind of done there. Okay, but let's just go through and recount this just real quick. So detox markers, heavily dependent on amino acids. B vitamin markers and the brain markers, purely all about amino acids. Energy production, ATP, huge role of amino acids in there. And then, let me go back here, sorry. Not so much there. We talked about magnesium, its role with amino acids, and then, of course, the amino acid section is all about amino acids, all right? So you get a lot of information here. And let's see, treatment-wise, let me make sure I mention treatments. Let me pull up another one and I'll just go through what the potential treatment options are as we look at a lab. And by the way, this is what the mentorship classes are like, right? You submit a lab, and then we go over it based on your patient's needs, you know, and help design programs. So let's say, I don't know, let's make this one up. Let's say it's chronic fatigue patients like that. Looking at their amino acids, they're like pretty good. Actually, those are all pretty good. One that's a little high, that's related to muscle. A couple that are a little high, maybe a little bit of B vitamin need there, but doesn't look that bad. Oh, but there's one that's low, glutamine. What's that related to? Specifically, gut lining, right? So you could give them glutamine. And glutamine is a special exception. If you have a patient with a gut lining problem and you want to give them some glutamine, there's sort of a special circumstance there for glutamine. So if you want to use glutamine for gut lining repair, again, it's old school naturopathic medicine, but also backed up by the current science, which is glutamine for gut repair. You want to use 20 to 30 grams a day for, you know, let's say 4 weeks. Maybe a little longer if you need to. 20 to 30 grams a day, that's a lot, right? But not for very long. You want to give a large amount of glutamine for a short period of time. That'll really get the gut lining to repair. And there's a wonderful doctor, if you don't know him, his name is Arland Hill. And he gave a great lecture series on this last year that I attended. Arland Hill, you can Google him, I'm sure. What a great guy, man. He's such a good doctor. I just have so much respect for him. But anyways, he had a whole couple-hour talk, I think like 3-hour talk on the gut. He had a large section on all the research on glutamine. That's all current. Again, this is an old school naturopathic idea, but all the latest science backs it up too. Okay. So then if the magnesium levels are low, you're going to check your glutathione markers, and if needed, you're going to give an amino acid, N-acetylcysteine, right, to bring up glutathione, or you can give glutathione itself if you wanted. That's a treatment there. Obviously, if the fatty acids are low, you're going to give fatty acids. We're not really talking about that tonight. If the energy production markers have a pattern of being either quite low or quite high, you oftentimes want to use free-form amino acids because there's a lot of different pathways that are required. There's a lot of different reasons why you need amino acids to make energy inside the mitochondria. And I have an image of that if you just want to see that real quick. Let me pull it up. It's involved in a bunch of the different steps here. Sorry, I have so many hundreds of PowerPoints. Sometimes I get a little lost myself, but let me just show this to you real quick. So you can see the role that they play here. It's pretty obvious in this slide. Where the green boxes are, where this is how you're making energy in the Krebs cycle, the green boxes are where amino acids come into play to create the citric acid cycle. So you can see they're quite essential in a whole variety of places. Most people don't think about that, but it's true. That's the basic physiology right there. So you need amino acids there. We talked all about B vitamins. So when you see a B vitamin marker high, it doesn't mean that they need amino acids. It means that they need B vitamins to break down their amino acids so they can be used. So that's going to have an impact on amino acids. And there's some really special markers here you should just memorize. Xanthuronate is a marker for B6. You just have to know that. So write that down somewhere. That's super, super important. Beta hydroxyisovalerate is a marker for biotin. These end up being really important clinically when you see them. So if xanthuronate is high, your patient needs B6. Don't be wimpy. Don't give them like this little 20 milligram pill. Give them 100 milligrams to start. If that's not enough, give them 200 milligrams. Don't make people sick, but give them a hefty dose of these things so you're getting some clinical changes. And then here, methylmalonate is a marker for B12. Just need to memorize that. That's B12. And fig glue, this guy here, is a marker for folate. So if these are high, they mean that you need B12 or folate, respectively. Okay. And remember, those markers are showing up virtue of how you're using amino acids. That's why they're important. Then here, these are made from amino acids. These first two here are from tyrosine. So if these markers are either low or high, you're going to give tyrosine at least 3 grams a day. 5-HIAA is related to tryptophan and 5-HTP. If you're going to give 5-HTP for someone that has low or high 5-HIAA, give at least 300 milligrams of 5-HTP. So 300 milligrams is a good effective dose. Kynurenate, quinolinate, picolinate, those are a little more complicated. Those are the inflammatory markers. Not really talking about that tonight. And then if these markers are off, if these three are off here, these are the glutathione markers. So if these markers are low or extremely high, means a person needs more glutathione. And you can use cysteine, or I usually use N-acetylcysteine. It's just easier to get. And you want to do, again, at least 3 grams. And then don't be shy. A lot of people need closer to maybe 4.5 grams. I don't use 6 very often. That's kind of a lot. But somewhere from 3 to 4.5 grams of N-acetylcysteine in divided doses will bring up the glutathione levels. Orotate is a marker for arginine, an amino acid. Remember, don't be shy. Give them at least 3 grams of arginine. If that marker is high, they'll start to dump their ammonia out. And you can use other amino acids in here if you want for liver detox, methionine, taurine, etc. All right, so now let us take a quick second here and hang on a second, let me get the right thing. Here we go. Bingo. And I'm gonna go through some questions. A bunch of questions came in, so don't despair. We're gonna look at your questions. All right, so hang on a second. Let me pull these up. Let me see how many I can get to in the time we have. Ooh, a lot of questions, that's good. How do you spell Dr. Lord's name? It's Richard Lord, Lord. My favorite Richard joke, he's very devout Christian. I think he's Baptist. And he made his comment last year. He's like, what do you think, Dan? A man named Lord whose father was a carpenter. And that's true. So Richard grew up in a very poor family in Georgia. His dad was a carpenter. I think he was the first person in his family to go to college. And really, it's just a wonderful man. You couldn't get a better person than Richard. Very spiritually oriented. Um, so yeah, that was plasma. So the testing that we do for amino acids is from plasma. The testing for organic acids is done from urine. Kelly is mentioning Jomar Labs is a good company to get products from amino acids. Is plasma the preferred method to test amino acids? Oh yeah, I have to ask Richard the question for that about that. Yeah, it is. I think it is much preferred. Um, let's see. What if someone has H. pylori? Then you would want to treat the stomach first. So you wouldn't necessarily do amino acids right away, right? So we're assuming that you're clearing infections and doing this kind of stuff. When does this mentorship start? It starts like this week. So you can sign up this week or next week. You have a couple weeks to decide, but the classes are getting going right now. So if you're interested, you should sign up pretty soon. It's a really good class. If you just want to know more about it, set up a time to talk to me or Mark, my person that talks to docs. What about giving liposomal glutathione? You can absolutely do that. It's so Richard's book is only available in the iBook format, unfortunately, because some of us don't have Macs like me. It's kind of a bummer, but that's just all that we have right now. Okay. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. I want to thank you guys. Hopefully this will stimulate some testing for yourself. And we're going to start to do something also later. We're going to start to do webinars like this, but where you guys can send in labs and I'll help review them so you can see how cool the class is and I can convince you that you should sign up for the mentorship. So keep an eye out for that. We'll start doing that. We'll start doing that pretty soon. Okay, take care, everyone. We'll catch up with you soon. All right, bye for now.